All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into something pretty wild. What if I told you that everything you see, everything that exists, isn't an accident, isn't a miracle, but is actually the result of a single, powerful mathematical equation? I know, it sounds like something straight out of a movie, but a brand new theory says that's exactly how reality works. So, let me ask you this. For something to be real, does it just have to be possible? I mean, just think about that for a second. Our gut tells us, sure, if it doesn't break the laws of physics, if you can imagine it, then yeah, it could exist. But what if we've got that completely backwards?
So most of us, right, we think like the model you see on the left. If it's possible, it can become existent. But this new theory, it just flips that whole thing on its head. It says, nope, probability comes first. Before anything else, the universe runs the numbers and asks, what are the odds? That statistical chance, that's the real gatekeeper of what gets to become real.
Okay, let's really dive into this. So, where did this even come from? Who cooked this up? Well, it all stems from a project that tries to lay out nothing less than a new blueprint for reality itself. The idea comes from this mysterious thinker, or maybe it's a group, known only as LAEV. And they basically boiled down their entire philosophy into this one killer line, which translates to, existence is not a whim of thought, but an inevitable consequence of statistics. Basically, what they're saying is, reality doesn't care what you wish for, it only cares about what the numbers predict.
And here it is. This is what they call the equation of existence. It might just look like a bunch of symbols, but if this theory is right, you're literally looking at the source code for, well, everything. The fundamental formula that decides when an idea crosses over and becomes real.
Okay, so to really get how this thing supposedly runs the universe, we gotta break it down. It's actually built on just 4 key ideas, 4 variables that work together to calculate all of existence.
All right, first up, let's look at the result. That's E of P. This is the final verdict. It's a simple binary output. A 1 means the thing exists. A 0 means it doesn't. It's the universe's final answer. Yes, you exist, or no, you don't. Simple as that.
But hold on, before you can get to that yes or no, any idea has to pass the first test. That's pi, or possibility. Think of this as the first gatekeeper. It's just a simple logic check. Is the idea even coherent? Like take a 5-sided square. Doesn't make sense, right? It's structurally impossible. So it gets a 0. End of story. If it's logical, it gets a 1 and gets to move on.
But here's the kicker. Just because something can exist doesn't mean it will. And that's where P of P, or probability, comes in. This, right here, is the beating heart of the whole equation. It's not about could it happen, it's about what are the actual quantifiable chances it will happen in a specific environment. It's just a number. From 0 to 1.
And that brings us to the last and maybe the most crucial piece of the puzzle, theta, the existence threshold. This is arguably the most fascinating variable. For anything to pop into reality, its combined score has to meet or beat this number. This is the line in the sand. This is what separates what if from what is.
Okay, so we've got all the parts. Now let's fire this thing up and see how it actually works with a few, let's call them real-world, and not-so-real-world examples.
Okay, let's take a look. First up, the 5-sided square. Right away, its possibility score, that pi variable, is 0. Why? Because it's logically impossible. And in math, you multiply anything by 0, you get 0. Boom! Doesn't exist. Simple. Okay, but what about something cool like a unicorn? Well, it's biologically possible. It's a mammal with a horn, so it gets a 1 for possibility, but its probability of actually evolving in our world is, let's be honest, super low. We'll say 0.001. That number is way below our example threshold of 0.05, so the equation spits out a 0. Sorry, no unicorns. But now let's look at something like a quantum particle. Within the laws of physics, it is absolutely possible, so pi is 1. And here's the key. Within its own little quantum world, its probability of just popping into existence might be super high, let's say 0.92. You multiply 1 by 0.92, you get 0.92. That sails right past our 0.05 threshold, so the equation gives it a 1, the particle pops into existence. See? It's not magic, it's just math. So you might be thinking, okay, that's a neat party trick, but is that all it is?
Well, according to its creators, the answer is a hard no. They argue the real power here isn't just in understanding reality, but in using this equation as a kind of operating system to build new things.
And this, for me, is where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. Think about the applications here. Imagine playing a game where the world and the story aren't pre-written. They literally evolve based on what's most probable at any given moment. Or an AI that can make decisions not just on logic, but on the statistical likelihood of success. You can even program digital money or assets that only exist if certain real-world events happen. It's a whole new way of looking at, well, everything. You could even analyze history and see which major events were, statistically speaking, almost bound to happen.
And all of this brings us back to the really big philosophical takeaway from this whole idea. If existence really is a calculation, then our place in the cosmos is defined by something very different than what we might have thought.
LAEV calls existence a brutal equilibrium. What can be plus what has a real chance of being. And that word, brutal, man, that's powerful. It's not a gentle process. It implies that existence isn't a gift. It's this cold, hard contest between what's logical and what's likely. There's no room for wishful thinking or a grand designer in this model.
So, in the end, it all comes down to this one single idea. La estadística decide ser. Statistics decides what gets to be. In this view, the universe isn't some grand artist with a vision, it's a mathematician, just running the numbers. And what we call real is just the stuff that had the best odds from the very beginning.
And that, of course, leaves us with one last huge question to chew on. If reality is just a calculation, what happens if we learn to manipulate those variables, to tweak the probability, to lower the threshold? What else is out there, just waiting in the wings, with a probability that's almost zero, just waiting for someone or something to come along and give it a statistical push into existence?